Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Bet 50, get 250 at the Betfred Sportsbook for this weekend in the NFL. Link is down below in the description. Today, top 30 running backs for week 2. We're going to try to not overreact to week 1, right?
Try not to,
but
we will see though.
The question before we get in is going to be, for me, is how we're navigating these running back competitions. We got into it a fair bit on the long form, but how are you generally navigating some of these competitions heading into week 2? What do you want to do start sit wise?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't really have, although I would have liked to have some Rashad Penny stock, I unfortunately don't, but I feel like with Kenneth Walker coming back this week, I don't know how much of a percentage, if he's at 75% or 100%, I think that's something to worry about for sure. In terms of other backfields, like not really a competition, but Najee Harris's injury against Patriots, that scares me a little bit, for sure. And then thinking of some of the other ones that are out there.
The Jets, the Jags,
well, the Jets,
bad team
you know
backfield.
how I feel about the Jets backfield already. It's Michael Carter season. Breece Hall doesn't belong in a fantasy lineup right now. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, even the Falcons too, and we'll get into that a little bit later on in this one. But it's definitely tricky waters right now.
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of like I'd rather just wait and see before risking the play. But if you can't, we'll tell you where we rank them this week. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below with any start-sit questions you have at running back. We're happy to answer them. We'll get into wide receivers later on this week. All right. Let's take a look at the top 6. We'll run through the top 12 fairly quickly here. We've got Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey in the 1-2 spots. Generally good matchups. I think the Giants' run D will be improved, but wasn't great last season. They were pretty decent against Derrick Henry. He averaged maybe 4 yards per carry.
He finished as like the running back 40 this week.
Yeah,
so
he had like Hilliard stole a couple scores.
He didn't score. Dontrell Hilliard finished as the running back 7, if you can believe that or not. If you can believe it or not. So, I wouldn't read into that too much. I think he still will be obviously a great option this week.
Just sometimes that kind of shit happens. Joe Mixon is one of the guys I'm highest on this week. The Cowboys made Leonard Fournette. I shouldn't say made Leonard Fournette look very good. He looked very good. Fournette is a good player who looked very good against the Cowboys. Cowboys weren't great against the run last year either. Doesn't look like they're going to be much improved. Some good chances to get to the second level for Joe Mixon, and we already saw the opportunities he can get as a pass catcher if T. Higgins is sidelined. So that's a big one. Austin Eckler, player I'm high on this week. Honestly, this is where he was drafted to be an the RB4, so it's not surprising that we're raking him here on some weeks. But Kansas City presents a good matchup for running backs. Last season, they were not very good against the run. I think Eckler, in the absence of Keenan Allen, there's little to no chance in my mind that Keenan plays. The receptions could be up as well. So high-scoring game. Vegas totals 54. What about DeAndre Swift? I got him at RB5 this week.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Because Jamal Williams he shouldn't just
stop giving him the ball. I know, I totally agree. And even DeAndre Swift, like he finished as the running back 3 this week, and he had like he barely had any touches. He had
12
compared to these running backs. Like Jonathan Taylor had probably, I think, at 30 over 30 plus.
Yep.
Like guys like Cordarrelle Patterson 25 plus. Like DeAndre Swift has the skill and the talent and the ability to be a workhorse back, but for whatever reason, Dan Campbell loves Jamal Williams, and he's a great heart and soul team guy, but he's annoying as all fuck for fantasy owners.
Yeah, I guess he just knows how much Jamal Williams loves the team. He's watching Hard Knocks as also being in the moment of Hard Knocks of how much he loves his team. So he's like, I'll give you all you take it the last few inches, Jamal, and he literally was averaging inches per carry. 11 carries, 26 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's just, Swift, I think we're going to learn from that. It's a good matchup, firing away on Swift as my RB5. Saquon Barkley as my RB6. Carolina, we saw what Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb were able to do this past week as backs out of running, but also as pass catchers. And we know that Saquon is plenty capable as a pass catcher, so we're definitely firing away there.
He's, I think he can easily finish as the RB1 again this week. He finished as the RB1 last week. He's going up against, right now, is the 31st ranked run defense after last week. He finished with the second most red zone touches and carries out of running backs. I think the Giants will be able to score a lot of points against its Panthers defense as well, so I think there's a great chance. Obviously, not a sittable option this week.
Yeah, this team has a chance to be 2-0 to start the season.
Yeah, which is crazy.
So flipping over to the next 6 to round out the 12, Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry. What do you think of those guys here in the top 7?
I think that's a pretty fair ranking for both of these guys. Fournette did look good. Just like even though Rachaad White was in the game, Leonard Fournette obviously dominated the first half in terms of carries and stuff. Like it obviously doesn't seem like this running back room is going to be moved anywhere near Rachaad White's time as of right now. He looked good enough last week, and the Bucs O-line isn't even. Like we talked about the Dallas D, the Bucs O-line is not nearly as good as it was last year. Donovan Smith went down with an injury as well.
Yeah, Brady was pressured on like 30+% of his dropbacks, where last year it was only like 14% or something. He was the most well protected, so that could be a concern. But I mean, with Godwin likely being out, that's going to mean Leonard Fournette could be more involved as a pass catcher too than he already is. He's already plenty involved.
And the Nick Chubb for the Jets. The Ravens didn't really run the ball super efficiently last week. However, if you look at in terms of talent from this backfield compared to the Browns, it's night and day. So like
the Ravens, you mean?
Oh, the Ravens. Sorry, like you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt compared to Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake, and then Lamar Jackson. But he only ran the ball. Lamar Jackson like 4 or 5 times. He was just throwing, staying in the pocket. Didn't really get a ton of pressure either, so he didn't really need to scramble.
It's like if you comparing these backfields would be like orange juice and Sunny D. Like if anyone tells you Sunny D is orange juice, that's just not the case. It's just
interesting comparison. Interesting, but I like it.
But the orange juice with pulp. This is a man's backfield. This is a man's backfield.
Are you a pulp guy?
No, I'm not a pulp guy.
I can't. If someone gives me orange juice with pulp, no,
I'm not a pulp guy.
Next.
That is childish. But again, we're not Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I think they're going to be plenty good this week, both of them. And then we move to from those 3, Derrick Henry just quickly. I mean, these guys are 10-point dogs in Buffalo. That's not a good game script to run in, but it is the Titans. They're going to be running the ball plenty.
Yeah.
But the Rams struggled against the Bills, running the football against the Bills. So I'm the slightest bit concerned about Henry, but that doesn't mean we're sitting this guy in any way, shape, or form. He's going to get volume. He still can be a top 10 option this week.
Hopefully, Dontrell Hilliard isn't a vulture in week 2.
Yeah, I would be surprised if that continues. Dalvin Cook and A.J. Dillon coming in at 10 and 11. Cook, I think the Eagles are a pretty stout, in my mind, a stout front 4. I think the Eagles. Obviously, their defense wasn't great last week against the run against the Lions, or specifically just against DeAndre Swift. I think that the Vikings, much like they showed us last week, can be really good putting the ball in the air. O'Connell was great with that, with Justin Jefferson last week. I think that's the way they will go after the Eagles. So I still think Cook is a good option, has a chance to score if these teams' offenses continue to play like they did in week 1. So still a top 10 option. And then coming outside the top 10, A.J. Dillon, who I'm very high on in a plus matchup for sure against the Bears.
Yeah, for sure. I have A.J. a little bit higher on my rankings. I think I would actually start him ahead of Cook and Fournette this week, personally. Although, Dalvin Cook going up against this Eagles defense, on paper, this Eagles defense looks awesome. But honestly, last week, they couldn't tackle at all. They had the worst tackling grade, according to PFF, out of all 32 teams last week. I think the matchup isn't great, but if they are still not able to tackle like maybe they were last year, I think Cook can have a really big game. A.J. Dillon, on the other hand, finished as the RB10 last week, was really the only efficient fantasy player on this Packers offense against the Vikings. They're going up against the Bears, who have the 32nd ranked run defense. I think A.J. Dillon is in for a big day, especially the fact that Aaron Rodgers was shit in week 1. I think this Packers offense is going to score a ton of points, and it doesn't really seem like these receivers have gotten in their groove, so it's going to be, I think, an A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones show.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I said it's a plus matchup. The Packers are, 11-point favorites right now?
10.5, yeah, I think right now, opened around 9.
So, yeah, I think that's a significant one there. And then we move into Alvin Kamara, Antonio Gibson at 12 and 13. Kamara, obviously the Bucs have proven to be a tough matchup for running backs. Kamara, though, he's a player that they look to get involved, not just as a runner, but in the receiving game. That they'll probably make that a point of emphasis, considering how tough it might be to run the ball against this team.
Yeah.
So I think he gets a lot of work as in the screen game and some short passes. I'm not concerned about. I have him, barely on the cusp of an RB1 this week, but I still am firing away on him. And then Antonio Gibson, where are you at with that in a good matchup against the Lions?
Well, first for for Kamara, I think this is a fair ranking this week after last week's performance. Obviously, wasn't very flashy, struggled, and now he goes against the Buccaneers, had the highest tackling grade last week, which is obviously not great for those guys who are slippery. Like maybe Kamara can change that a little bit more this week, but still.
Saints have always dominated the Bucs.
Exactly.
So
that's a good point.
Just continues.
But it's still like obviously a start, but I would be a little worried about after week 1 and going into this matchup.
Yeah.
Antonio Gibson, like he really took advantage last week. He was great. He scored, right? He did not score.
No. He had 7 catches, I believe, was efficient in his touches. He didn't score, though.
So, against this Lions defense, we just saw all 3 Eagles running backs score a touchdown, and then on top of that, Jalen Hurts. So they had 4 rushing touchdowns. Not saying Antonio Gibson is going to score 4 touchdowns, but it's definitely a great matchup this week and someone I'd be confident in starting for sure.
Yeah, Javonte Williams in at 14. Obviously a very good matchup for Denver against Houston, who hung strong against Indy, but gave up a ton of yards. I think they had 400 yards of offense. The Colts did, combined with Taylor, and I'm almost positive it was
probably
over
because Taylor had close to 150 rushing yards for sure.
So good matchup. Thing is there's still a split here. Gordon had more carries. Javonte had 12 targets, right?
Yeah.
The other night in a game where they were trailing. So I still think Javonte is the player. Both these guys fumbled inside the 5, which was a problem, but at least, it wasn't just Javonte fumbling. We saw Gordon as well. So nobody's kind of ahead of the other in terms of, coach's doghouse. So I'm still firing away on Javonte. It's just that Gordon is still going to be involved. So, asserting him in a good matchup as like a top 6 guy is a little bit tougher.
Yeah,
for me.
I wanted to ask you about Javonte. I'm a little surprised I didn't see him a little bit higher on his list because I did see like he got the official start, let's say, and he did outsnap Melvin Gordon 59% to 41%, which is his highest share he's gotten in this backfield since being with the Broncos and being in the NFL. Yep. So, do you not think that that's just going to continue to increase, and especially against a matchup like the Texans? That's the one thing. I think I would have him ahead of Gibson and Kamara this week.
So here's what I think it's a good point. So I have him RB14 like we talked about, but I think there are 10-point favorites in this game, right? 10-point favorites against Houston. So I think in a game script, if they're well ahead, I think the split will still be there. They're not going to run this guy out there in a big lead, but as well, like, I still have him as on the cusp of a top 12 back this week. It's not like I think he's going to be outside, but I still think the split's going to be there. So if he doesn't, if he's not getting 20 carries, then I have to make sure that he scores in this game to ensure that it meets and surpasses this ranking, which he can certainly do. But I want to, the guys that I'm going to have in my top 12 are guys that I know are going to get touches. That's what I know about Antonio Gibson, despite J.D. McKissick's involvement, and that's what I know about Alvin Kamara. So that would be the big difference for me there. Going to 15 and 16 with Josh Jacobs and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The Cardinals, not good against the run last week. I'm definitely worried about this defense being able to slow teams down. They weren't good against the run this past back in 2021 as well. Jacobs was a guy who last week against the Chargers was pretty decent in his opportunities, but this team was down right away. Yeah. Like they were trailing all game, so wasn't the best game script for him. We saw Devontae Adams have a big game. I think in a game here, they're at home, favored by 5.5 points. Better game script here against a team that's not as good against the run, so I think Jacobs has a good chance to have a bounce back week.
Yeah, I really hope we see Josh Jacobs a little bit more involved in the passing game this week. Like we saw CEH really have a good game catching the ball in the backfield for the Chiefs. I think that's something that the Raiders can exploit again this week. So I hope Josh Jacobs is the beneficiary because I definitely have a little bit of Josh Jacobs stock in my fantasy leagues this year.
Yep.
And hopefully, because honestly, watching that game back, a lot of like Derek Carr threw 2 picks or 3 picks? 2 picks, I believe.
Yeah, sacked a number of times.
If you look at like his throws, they were forces to Darren Waller. I feel like Devontae Adams is open all the time because he's an excellent route runner, and we saw that in the number of targets he got. I just hope that maybe Derek Carr is like, you know what, I do have Josh Jacobs here. I don't need to force it down the field to Waller. I know Adams is open. I'm going to try and deviate the splits up a little bit better in the passing game.
Right. Let's get into Thursday Night Football quickly.
Yes.
We've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire as the RB16, but I want to talk a little Thursday Night Football, a very exciting game. So we are absolutely heading to the sportsbook for every primetime game. So over at Betfred, we're looking at a couple of props here. My favorite one this week is, I know we got Clyde as the RB16, but I want to take a flyer on Jerick McKinnon. Anytime touchdown, plus 400 over at Betfred.
Wow.
I really like this because the Chargers run defense definitely improved, looked a fair bit better. Late in the game, though, we're giving up some chunk runs to Jacobs. The Chiefs in a game here at home have split up the carries between their backs. I think the main two for sure are Clyde and McKinnon. Pacheco came in late when the game was out of hand. That's where the majority of his touches came. But we saw Clyde, who had his 2 scores as a receiver, as a pass catcher. Both of his touchdowns were receiving touchdowns. McKinnon, though, did out-snap him and run more routes than Clyde did. So I like McKinnon here to get involved also in the run game for 5, 6, 8 touches, but also work pretty frequently as a pass catcher. I like him to have a chance as a flyer to score, and this one's paying nice, 5-1 plus 400 can be a nice way to spend your Thursday night. So I like that one.
Yeah, I like that one. One receiving prop that I'm targeting on Betfred for this Thursday night game is Mike Williams over receiving yards. I had this play last week. I think it was pretty unlucky that he didn't really get the amount of targets, considering he was on the field a ton, and Keenan Allen went down with that injury, looking like he won't play on Thursday night. And one interesting thing that I did look up, I was looking at the Chiefs cornerbacks and where they're lining up. Obviously, L'Jarius Sneed is their top corner by a landslide now that Charvarius Ward and Tyrann Mathieu are not in the Chiefs secondary anymore. He lined up pretty much exclusively in the slot against the Cardinals, and I would think maybe he'd follow Marquise Brown, considering there was no one on that Cardinals receiving room that was healthy. Rondale Moore, DeAndre Hopkins out. Yep. So Mike Williams lines up 82% of the time out wide. He's not really a slot receiver. He's a big, deep threat guy. So Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter will probably see L'Jarius Sneed more than Mike Williams, and then Mike Williams gets Rashad Fenton and Trent McDuffie. McDuffie's also a little banged up as well. I think Mike Williams will be able to really exploit that matchup. I think Herbert's going to be looking his way as well, and Mike Williams has had some really good games against the Chiefs in the past. 2 out of the last 3 games, he's had over 9 targets and over 100 receiving yards, and he has 3 touchdowns in those 3 games as well. So I think he's huge. A guy to have anytime touchdown score, maybe if you want to look at that as well. I'll be taking his receiving yards, laddering it as much as I can, to be honest, probably.
Yeah, I think this is, I know it's concerning to see him be absent last week. Not to worry, with Keenan out, Mike's always been a big target for Herbert ever since the offensive change with Joe Lombardi. So I think he'll bounce back. And Chiefs very undersized secondary.
Yes.
And we've got a guy who is one of the best in terms of high pointing and making plays downfield, so he can help you out just in one big play. So I like Mike this week. As we move along, let's go to the next 6 here in our running back rankings. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we mentioned at 16. He's definitely a go this week after the 2 touchdowns. He seems to be the number one guy.
RB6 last week.
Yeah,
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
James Conner and Miles Sanders. Obviously, Conner not very efficient in his touches against the Chiefs last week. Pretty surprising to see that for him. But again, this was a team that was down right away. So Conner did find the end zone, which helped you and saved you for the week. But now going up against Las Vegas. Vegas was decent against the run against the Chargers. So this isn't necessarily a big matchup. But again, this is a Cardinals team that's a little shorthanded and banged up. So I think Conner will be is someone you're going to be starting pretty consistently. I don't have him as a guy I'm very high on this week, but still firing away.
Yeah, Conner worries me a little bit this week just with the matchup and how this Cardinals offense is going. It doesn't really seem like the trajectory of this season for the Cardinals is going anywhere positive. So worries them a little bit. Miles Sanders, I wanted to ask you. So he obviously he had a good week last week despite all the different running backs being filtered into this offense. Does that worry you at all going into this week?
This is another case of the Swift situation where this guy was by far the most efficient of the 3. He found the end zone. I think he will be the guy they look to the most. The Vikings struggled against the run last season. Sandy mentioned in the long form that the Packers averaged over 6 yards per carry on the ground. So I think he asserts himself as the top option this week. So that's why I have him in the top 20.
Yeah. I mean, Nick Sirianni is just a total douche canoe to all fantasy owners out there. He's been doing this ever since he's really been in Philadelphia. Yeah. So it's not as much of a shock, I guess, as much people can see. But to see that all 3 of these running backs pretty much had solid fantasy days is encouraging, I guess. Miles Sanders is getting off to a right foot, and last year I don't think he did. So this is good to see for sure.
Aaron Jones, we talked about, not too much more to say there. It's a good matchup. He's splitting with A.J. Dillon. I think Dillon has the chance on the ground to be better, but Jones still top 20 option who should have lots of receiving work. Najee Harris, you mentioned it. We're a little bit worried about him just coming off the injury, and the Patriots were very stout against the run against the Dolphins last week. So this is just a terrible offense. I want to let you hand it over to you for some of the talk here on these other three guys. We have 21, 22, 23. We've got Darrell Henderson, Chase Edmonds, Devin Singletary.
Yeah, I actually think Chase Edmonds can be a pretty good option this week against the Ravens. Like, surprisingly enough, although they did beat the wheels off the Jets, they actually had a pretty poor rushing grade.
Yep.
So I feel like Chase Edmonds, with his versatility, could have a pretty solid week. Devin Singletary was clearly the best back on Thursday night.
Yep.
I do not know why Zach Moss had like 11 or 12 carries. It made absolutely zero sense. Maybe it was because they were up. But I think against this Titans offense, we saw what Saquon did. I think Devin Singletary, if he punches one in, could have a really good fantasy week.
Game script is the big one for me.
Yeah.
10-point favorites.
Yeah.
This comes to fruition, then we're running the ball more and a little bit more conservative too.
And then Darrell Henderson. I mean, Kamara had a pretty bad week against the Falcons. Kind of seems like a one-off to me.
Yeah.
Not going to look into that too much. But, Kyron Williams is out. Cam Akers is obviously still dealing with some sort of injury, or else he would have been on the field much more. So Darrell Henderson is definitely someone you can start as your RB2 this week with confidence, I would say.
Yeah, Cam Akers is my RB40 this week. I'll believe it when I see it. Moving along, Ezekiel Elliott to close out the top 24.
I feel really bad for you if you have Ezekiel Elliott on your team right now, because it's just he was already coming into this season in a bad spot, and this just makes it even worse. The fact that Cooper Rush is now the guy there.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. He'll probably get volume, but at this stage in his career, he's just not explosive enough that I can be like, okay, this guy will break some big plays for me. We haven't seen it enough. The offense is going to be stale. The Bengals are 9-point favorites. I like to use, obviously Vegas doesn't get everything right, but it's a good indication. These guys set the lines of what the game script will be as 9-point dogs. That doesn't bode well for a running back. So he's still someone you can play because he's the number one option. But again, just proceed with caution. We're going to close out the top 30 here. Cordero Patterson, Damian Harris, Kareem Hunt. You got to fire away on Patterson. I mean, I know this is a Rams team that, again, not the greatest matchup, but he's someone that will be involved as a pass catcher. We had Damian Williams hurt, but he did come back.
Tyler Algier
if they're willing to make Algier an inactive, I think it speaks to their confident running Cordero out and giving him opportunities. Ryan told me he was the most touches he's had in his career?
Yeah, career high in touches out of the backfield for Mr. Cordero Patterson. But one thing I will say, to be honest, Cordero Patterson is a guy I'm sitting this week if I have him. I know that's crazy after his week last week, but the fact that he had a career high in rushes and touches in this backfield in Atlanta, going up against a really good Rams run defense, and since he had a really good week, he was efficient last week, I think a lot of people are going to be high on him. I'm looking for a rushing yard total under for him. Maybe not rushing and receiving, because I think he could still be very efficient in the passing game, because Mariota can flip it to him, and he was, to as much as I thought, I didn't think Mariota would maybe go into that and just run the ball a little bit more. Yep. But it did seem like Cordero was getting the ball as a receiver as well. So as a running back this week, I really don't like Cordero Patterson, and I'm sitting him. So
yeah. Damian Harris, Kareem Hunt. So Harris, this is a good matchup for the Patriots running game. The Steelers are pretty I think we're one of the worst teams in terms of opponent yards per carry last season. Mixon had a good afternoon last week. My problem is these guys seem to be splitting things right up the middle in terms of touches between him and Ramondre, and then Ty Montgomery is involved as a pass catcher. So I think Harris will lead the team in carries, but I don't know by how much. So I think he's someone you can play this week, but I'm not giving him. I'm not stamping him as terms of a high upside guy.
Yeah, no, definitely not. This matchup concerns me a little bit. It's weird I don't know how obviously they do these PFF grades, but the Steelers had the highest rushing grade last week in terms of defense. So with
TJ Watt out now.
Good point.
That's an interesting one.
With the unknown, like T-Mac kind of said, with Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris, this is a wait and see for me. I actually have Harris in a couple leagues, but unless he scores, which he very well could, he's scored a ton last week.
Last year,
sorry. He just, I don't have enough faith in him just yet. So he's probably going to stay on my bench. But Kareem Hunt on the other side, I would start him. I would start him and Chubb this week against the Jets.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can't.
Yeah, I think it's just whether or not he keeps scoring touchdowns is the question. That's why I have him as my RB 27. But good matchup here. He'll be splitting touches, getting receptions. So I'm still firing away on him, just not with a ton of high upside. Jeff Wilson sneaks into the top 30, my RB 28. Seattle, very good against the run. I know you guys won't think that this is a really good team. Obviously, they told us otherwise last week against Denver, but this team will be good against the run probably all year. I know it's a team that will likely be down in a fair bit of games. They're heavy underdogs against the 49ers this week, but I still respect them as a team on the ground, and this game could be slow-paced and low-scoring. So I can play Jeff Wilson in a team that puts emphasis on running the football. We talked about in waiver wire, but this is where I've got him this week.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I prefer this matchup to you against Seattle. I think Jeff Wilson will have a pretty solid week. I could definitely see him finishing in the RB top 24 of running backs in week 2. I think maybe in terms of rushing defensive grades, I wonder if those 2 touchdowns from Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams, if those would have punched it in, if they would have changed anything at all. I wasn't amazed by this Seahawks front 7, I guess you could say. I don't know. Yeah. I still don't believe this defense is very good. Jamal Adams probably won't play next week either. There goes their captain of their defense, to say, I guess, sort of.
He's a good run defense talent.
Yeah, Mr. Blitz. But yeah, I like the matchup this week for Jeff Wilson.
We met Jerome Andre, and then closing things out, Michael Carter.
I do not see Breece Hall anywhere on this list, Tyler.
No, he's outside my top 40.
Like it.
Again, I think the Browns are a good defense.
Yeah, that's true. It's a horrible matchup for the Jets this week.
Yeah. Carter, though, still can play if you need to. Any guys that you're surprised that I left out? I left out Travis Etienne. He's above James Robinson for me this week. I mentioned Jerick McKinnon to score. He's in my top 36. I have Rashad Penny outside of it just with a really tough matchup and the fact that Ken Walker will likely be back, so that will eat into things.
No, I don't. I think I agree with pretty much most of your list, especially the last 10 guys. Guys I'm really looking to start, and even in looking for in DFS contest this week would be guys like AJ Dillon I'm looking at. Who else? Saquon will be super expensive this week as well. There's one more guy.
Henderson's worth a flyer
for sure. Javonte Williams and Josh Jacobs as well. I think those guys will. I think Josh Jacobs will have a bounce back week and have a great game on the ground.
All right. Well, guys, again, we're live. We are live on Twitch every Sunday morning to help you with start sit decisions. Again, this is early in the week on Wednesday that we're posting this, so things could change in terms of injuries. Always happy to help you out with start sit decisions. So drop down in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.